Welcome boys and girls, Costin here with a discussion about the Slaanesh endgame in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires, and the kind of problems that Slaanesh does have at the moment that hopefully will be improved in Tides of Torment. So, in this campaign, turn 59, which is not necessarily the best pace you can get in a campaign like this, but in this campaign I vassalized Ulfwan, so I did Alariel through diplomacy, I did Tyrion through subjugation, Elfarion through subjugation, Grom for diplomacy, Morathi through cults, because you can set up cults, the special cult magi, who can allow you to get a bunch of seductive influence. So you don't even need to go to a faction and fight them or even engage in diplomacy. You just need 400 seductive influence. That's just 2 of those special cults. So you can always guarantee a vassalization with a faction. And there's a lot of vassals I have here in this campaign. So I got Bellicor, I got Karl Franz, I did that through diplomacy. It is a bit ridiculous as a system, and it certainly makes things somewhat tedious in a campaign because you know that it's easy enough to force a vassalization on a faction. And in fact, you're significantly incentivized to actually vassalize a faction, not just because if you subjugate them specifically, you'll gain a bunch of devotees, so that's cults, that's campaign movement range, that's more power to give yourself even more power. But obviously the economic benefits are significant, and on top of that you do get access to their unit roster through allied recruitment, which is a pretty big deal in a Slaanesh campaign because you may be lacking in things like artillery. You are certainly, you don't have artillery options, you don't have ranged options, so vassalizing a faction like Avalorn and getting things like Sisters of Avalorn, or getting access to Null Ironsides or Hochland long rifles from the Empire, that can be a fairly substantial benefit in an Akari campaign. More importantly, if you get access to artillery, it does help your campaign in the long term because it makes dealing with settlements that much better. Slaanesh can deal with sieges and can deal with minor settlement battles, but it's not ideal when you don't have ranged units, when you don't have the ability of destroying towers, wall towers, towers inside settlement barricades. So it does push you into abusing various things in terms of AI behavior to secure a victory. Or you can get a bunch of allied recruitment and start recruiting artillery from your allies. Or you can also get big single entities. I'm not really fond of this system because I think while allied recruitment has its uses and can certainly spice up the variety in a campaign, but when the unit roster of a race is limited, and you basically end up in a situation where it's like, oh, I'm going to recruit a bunch of Chosen, I'm going to recruit a bunch of Soul Grinders of Slaanesh, Chaos Knights of Slaanesh, Greater Demons. It's just like, oh, you start with a bunch of melee units, then you recruit higher tier melee units, and it's not like Khorne. See, with a Khorne campaign, you could argue it's the same thing, but the different units that Khorne has do have different roles. Like you have your frontline holders in Chaos Warriors with shields and in Chosen with shields. Then you have dual weapons, then you have halberds, different roles. Like dual weapons do more damage, halberds are good line holders. You don't really have that kind of situation with Slaanesh. And then even when you're talking about Skull Reapers, you're sacrificing defensive capability for offensive capability in Wrathmongers with fewer models per unit, but huge amount of combat ability. There is that kind of variety. And then you talk about things like Minotaurs of Khorne, like there is a genuine amount of variety, even though it's melee focused. With Slaanesh, the problem is a lot of that variety might come in the form of fast-moving units. Sure, you get Heartseekers of Slaanesh, you get Seekers of Slaanesh, you get, chariots, etc., but your infantry is limited. And the problem is, you have a lot of those sieges in minor settlements, and just having Demonettes, Exalted Demonettes, and Chaos Warriors is not really a great situation. Hopefully that will be improved with Tides of Torment, because it does get very, very tedious to have to fight these battles manually. Another problem over here is, of course, with this many vassals, you don't really care about the campaign anymore once you've gotten like all of Wolf-1. Or once you got yourself a certain number of vassals, you know you're not going to lose your campaign. It's going to be very difficult for any AI faction to compete with that. So I think the vassal system in itself, the way it works for a lot of factions, or the way it works in general, is not especially great. But the problem is, when you're looking at other factions, you don't have the same kind of incentive that you do in an Akari campaign, because it is devotees, it is univariety that is important. It's even economic potential. So what are you all about Khorne? You can play an entire Khorne campaign without ever gaining vassal. You can gain vassals for diplomacy. Warriors of Chaos may gain vassals, sure, and that can also trivialize their campaigns as well, and they have issues, but at least they have that kind of univariety. So Slaanesh has kind of the worst of all worlds in that respect. The univariety Slaanesh has by default is limited, the types of units, especially when, again, we're dealing with sieges, we're dealing with those settlement battles, we're dealing with, you know, we're dealing with, in this case not so much, but we're dealing with, with provincial capitals, or we're dealing with AI that's building garrison buildings in quite a few of their settlements, so more minor settlement battles, and the way we approach that, it's not really going to change from beginning to end of a campaign. Sure, you might get better units for it, but the worst part about that, once you get better units, you kind of just like, okay, I got those better units, what do I care about fighting battles, right? So you just start embracing the idea of just like, okay, screw it, I'm just going to auto-resolve every single battle in that campaign from this point onward. This does, however, create a further issue, because you can auto-resolve those battles, sure, but then you get hit by Slaanesh's poor casualty replenishment. Now, CA has stated in the recent video that they are going to improve this aspect with regards to the race, that they're looking at things like casualty replenishment. They also mentioned unit stats, and hopefully the new units that they do add in Tides of Torment will add that kind of variety that we're so lacking. Also, it's a question of unit tiers as well. But I do think one of the problems is with Slaanesh, you look at Slaaneshi units, right? You look at infantry specifically for Slaanesh. Like Demonettes, they can do damage, pretty solid, right? But they are really poor in auto-resolve, and they're the kind of units that are poor in actual battles. Like the glass cannon type unit, the problem is they don't route, they get banished. Devoted Marauders, not great units at all. Forsaken, sure, they do get the job done. What about Chaos Warriors of Slaanesh? Well, yeah, okay, you have your Sword and Shield Infantry, and then what else do you have? Oh, you get Hell Scourges. They have poison attacks, so they can slow down the enemy. To be sure, they have their uses in that respect. But you're really lacking even that weapon variety for Chaos Warriors. Like, I swear, like, if they give us Chaos Warriors of Slaanesh and Chosen Slaanesh, like, I don't know, Grey Weapons or Halberds, that would be pretty damn good, I'm not gonna lie. Maybe Slangors will give us that extra kind of infantry variety that Slaanesh is lacking right now. Hopefully. We'll find out on that subject, how things will end up working for Slaanesh from that perspective. But the combination of the way you fight battles, the lack of artillery, the lack of a great way of approaching sieges, outside of, you know, getting a bunch of allied recruitment, which you can't do early on. But that combination, combined with a bad auto-resolve for a lot of units, as well as a lack of casualty replenishment, does make it really, really tedious to be playing a long-term Slaaneshi campaign. And that's on top of the usual issues that you do have in Warhammer free campaigns. Now, I imagine things are going to be better, because like the way the AI is right now, like CA did those AI betas, and we haven't gotten those improvements in the base game. Hopefully we will with 6.2, so I think that's going to improve the campaign by quite a bit. For instance, in this campaign, actually, the biggest threat that ended up being really present here was actually Bretonnia, because they could match me in a field battle, and they have a much better situation in sieges, but like I was just able to outmaneuver them over here. Also defeat a bunch of lords, but yeah, they have magical attacks. Like, Slaaneshi's lack of variety means that they can also be hard countered by different things in a campaign, too. I was actually pleasantly surprised when Bretonnia put up a fight, and then they just got their armies ambushed and annihilated in field battle. So that's another problem. In a campaign, like, you might have a worthy opponent that could give you a legitimate challenge, but then it doesn't really end up being a legitimate challenge, so that was disappointing, to say the least. I was looking forward to actually having a serious fight over here, and then it never materialized. Like, past dealing with Tyrion, there's not been a single worthy opponent in this entire campaign, and that's quite a shame, really. And this is the highest difficulty. Sure, I have almost 4,000 hours in Warhammer 3, but there are campaigns where you can have that kind of interesting dynamic to a campaign, and Slaanesh ain't it. Like, all these issues that I've mentioned over here, just the pacing of campaign, the opponents you have to deal with, how you deal with it, and the kind of incentive structure. Again, if we weren't so incentivized to get so many vassals, like, every time you subjugate a faction, minor faction, major faction, and this is not even the Ultima form, I could have gotten a lot more vassals, I deliberately chose not to. But every time you subjugate a faction, you get those devotees. So why wouldn't you do it? But that's not interesting, really. Because, like, vassals are just pure power. It's not an alliance where you have to worry. It's like, okay, if my relationship goes down, vassals may break off from you, but that is exceptionally rare. I think I haven't seen it once in all of my campaigns of Warhammer 3. And I've played quite a few of them with vassals. Maybe once, really, once or twice if I really think hard about it, but that's about it. And it's a flat system, it's unlimited power, and it's complete ridiculousness, right? Like, having this many vassals is ridiculous, especially because of how I gained some of those vassals. Like, granted, I did set up cults with Morathi, Karl Franz. I had those cults working to improve diplomatic relations. But yeah, there's all kinds of balancing aspects with Slaanesh. Both some of the stuff that's really powerful, some of the stuff that's weak. I don't think it's a great race to play right now. And I do sincerely hope that it is going to be better with Tides of Torment. Go see and signing out.